think you said I was a cross between Mike Baxter and Red Foreman.
Yeah, that's true. I did say
That's
that.
the highest of high compliments, by the way. Society's family unit is in crisis as less and less people are making the commitment of a lifelong partnership together. It has been normalized, encouraged, and easier than ever to just throw in the towel when the going gets tough. With time at a premium, start by spending 20 minutes per week gaining thought-provoking inspiration towards a journey of self-improvement, ultimately improving your marriage, your family, your health, and your home. Robert L. Backman states that father is the noblest title a man can be given. It's more than a biological role. It signifies a patriarch, a leader, an exemplar, a confidant, a teacher, a hero, a friend. What is a father? What does it mean to you? Fathers tend to be taken for granted at times, but they are vital in kids flourishing in society as productive adults. Today we are going to discuss 7 things that display how fathers can have a significant impact with their kids.
Welcome back to another episode of the Family Order Podcast. Today, we're kicking off our 8-part summer series on parenting. Why? Because many kids are home for summer break, and we have some holidays coming up that will tie in nicely, and we want to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive into 8 different sub-subjects of parenting that we've come up with. So there will be many other topics discussed in the coming weeks, including moms, helicopter parenting, difficult conversations, and much more. We can't cover everything in 20 minutes, but we're going to cover some trends and some statistics, but also have a little fun with it. This discussion will be good for biological fathers, as well as stepdads, fathers-in-law, and foster parents, and so on. We'll have to paint with broad strokes because obviously many tips can apply in many different situations. So to start us off, here's a couple of quotes that you might have heard or you might have put on a Father's Day present.
Or a card.
Probably
saw it on a bumper sticker at some point.
So first up, dad is a son's first hero and a daughter's first love. I do think that that's true.
Mm-hmm.
How many times does KJ say how much she loves you? She loves your muscles and,
I know.
and everything. And Brayden already looks up to you. So
As long as they both remember that.
yeah. Also, a truly rich man is one whose children run into his arms when his hands are empty. Even as a mother, that's like the best feeling in the world. Yeah. Is your kids running to you.
It's not about your money that you give them. It's not about what you can offer them. It's just them running to you into your arms for the best reason ever, which is just because.
Theodore Roosevelt also stated, but for unflagging interest and enjoyment, a household of children, if things go reasonably well, certainly makes all other forms of success and achievement lose their importance by comparison.
Really quickly, we'll just give a quick preface of our experiences with not necessarily our dads, but what we had, for father figures around us, what we see as we grew up, and now that we're adults and we have kids of our own. One example that I saw was a lot of dads, as I was growing up, 80s, kind of in the 80s generation, was that a lot of dads were very absent. Some were around, but they weren't really engaged. They were there, but they weren't there. They were sort of just kind of taking orders, did what they had to do, but then they escaped and found other things to do that were more important.
Are you sure you're talking about the 80s or like right now?
Probably transcends multiple decades.
Don't they always doesn't the old trends always come back around? The old styles always come back around?
I don't know if it ever cycled off. I think it continued from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and more through today, but I think times are changing a little bit.
Well, I obviously had my dad. My parents are still married over 30 years to this day. So I have my biological dad. I don't have stepdads or anything like that. But my dad was extremely hardworking throughout our entire childhood. I know that he had third shift for the longest time. I remember him sleeping during the day and being gone at night. I knew that was in a different town and everything. Both my parents, I didn't see them very much growing up. But I do feel like when my dad was there, he was there. He was very present. In younger years, obviously, you know, my dad mowed the lawn. My dad played softball with us. You know, my dad did a lot of things when he was there and was very present.
Did you have other father figures around that you even sought out as you teenage years or middle school years?
Oh yeah. Well, my best friend's dad, one of my dad's best friends, I call him Uncle Bill, and he was always around too. Whenever my dad wasn't present, he had full on permission to swap my butt.
So why did you gravitate towards guys like that?
Because they provided for their families. They were present. They were married. I guess that just being in the town I grew up in, divorce was not a thing in the way that I was raised and things like that. So most of the men that I was around, were manly men that provided for their families, were disciplinarians and things like that. Towards high school, obviously, my youth group, my youth leaders gravitated towards them and people of the church and everything. So I was always pretty well surrounded by full-time dads.
Good father figures.
Good father figures, yeah. Full-time people, dads that were present. You know, I was surrounded by children who had dads.
So touching on our masculinity episode, it seems like you looked for dads that were providers, protectors, presiders in their home, or in some way in their community. Mm-hmm. You know, they were good dudes, but they were also had a little something extra when it came to showing people the way, providing guidance, and, you know, giving you that little bit of extra comfort. It just makes us think about, you know, as we reflected for this episode, what does it make us want for our kids in terms of a father figure?
Looking at Ben as a father, many dads are involved and are caring and loving, but it's almost like they're not sure what to do with their kids sometimes. Ben is probably the polar opposite. He pretty much always knows what to do with the kids. For example, when it comes to like wrestling or something like that. Cadence loves to wrestle and Brayden loves to wrestle. I just sit back and watch. Mm-hmm. So he is definitely able to provide that physical interaction, and it's not that he doesn't provide like a loving interaction as well. He definitely does. He can cuddle when it needs cuddle time and things like that. As far as being able to provide things in the household, you know, you're able to pretty much fix most things. I mean, I think obviously there's been like a transition in decades from like what, you know, men way back when used to fix versus what they fix now, you know, men in the 70s versus now. But that's also a product of technology. I don't necessarily want you getting into the computer of the truck and stuff like that. Like the trucks are built differently, but you can change, you know, filters and things like that and save money. And I think that we reflected on that in one of the podcasts as well. Pretty minor breaks around the house. You're able to take care of it. I don't expect you to be like up, like ripping our roof off or anything that.
Yeah. You don't want me spending an entire weekend working on something outside or down in the basement.
Yeah.
When it's like, you know, look, we got other things we'd like to go do. There's plenty of things that we could figure out, but it's just not worth it at some point.
I do know dads that are like that they work 40, 50 hour plus weeks at the regular job, and then they come home and they have to do all of these other people's jobs because they want to save money, or I don't know, or they don't want to be around their family or something. They want to go build this or build that or work on this or work on that.
Right. I think they do enjoy it to a point.
Weekend. Yeah, it's one thing to have a hobby.
I think they like it, and I don't I don't necessarily think it's just about money. I do agree that at some juncture, I think there's a small part of it that's about getting away and being able to go just do something you like.
Yeah, it's a way to be checked out without being divorced.
You're making money. I mean, you're making money. You're doing something productive. It's not the worst thing.
Yeah.
But in a small way, there's a small part where I think some guys check out as a dad because it's a little easier to go do something you really like doing, but you just so happen to make money at it.
Yeah, and so that's your excuse to be able to check out from your kids a little bit.
By the way, we spend way more time with our kids than previous generations, so that is not to cast stones on anybody.
Yeah. As far as being, like, strong and brave, I mean, yes, you like to kill, not like to kill spiders, but you kill the
KJ
spiders.
wants me to capture everything safely and let it outside.
Secretly, we just kill them.
A mouse or a spider or a fly or whatever it is. Am I usually the one that looks under the bed or does something if it's a scary situation?
Beds go to the floors.
If there's look in the closet. If there's a bump in the night, who goes and checks that out?
Absolutely. If I have some paranoia of did we lock the doors and all of those things, he goes and double checks them and stuff like that. You're an enforcer when I need you to be an enforcer.
With discipline.
When it comes to discipline, yes.
Okay.
When it gets to that point where it's just not getting between the two ears of a child.
Well, why do you think that KJ responds when I get upset versus you? Responds more. She tends to...
Yeah, she doesn't like it when you're angry.
Right.
And
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah,
but
I mean, not saying you, like, blow up or, anything like
usually
that.
I don't.
You're able to say something once, and she typically listens versus me. And that's probably just a product of the past 9 years of raising her.
Just the repeat of, I've had it do this, I've had it do this. After the third time, it's like, is she serious? Or I can't really tell. But she knows with Dad, it's over. Once he reaches that point, it's done. There's no going back. This isn't going to get any better. I'm not going to get what I want now.
I think all in all, you're pretty much the quintessential, like, dad, if I did say so myself.
I think you said I was a cross between Mike Baxter and Red Foreman.
Yeah. That's true. I did say that.
That's the highest of high compliments, by the way. For all of you listening, what do you remember about your dad? Was he engaged and involved? Was he absent? Was he the fun one out of your two parents? Just stop and think about that for a second. We know that the stereotypes that Dad typically has had is he was the breadwinner. He brings home the bacon. And Mom was the nurturing caregiver. Times have changed, obviously. And for several reasons, dads even have a different outlook on being a dad. Studies have shown that many dads see themselves as more affectionate than their dads were and far more involved. This is all while travel requirements for work have increased over the past several decades. Mm-hmm. What does that say? In general, dads certainly engage in more horseplay. They joke around more. They're more physical when they engage in play. Kids today certainly need to be pushed towards more physical activity, but dads also need to be more involved in their schooling, the friends that the kids have, and many other activities inside the home.
For example, in 1960, only 10% of kids were raised without a father in the home. And today, it's 40%. There are many reasons for those numbers, but here are some other stats or info to keep in mind regarding a father figure in the home. First of all, children with fathers make more money as adults. Obviously, we understand that there are exceptions to this rule.
Every rule. Every rule. Yeah, sure. Okay. This is just sort of the norm, the trend that we have.
The majority.
Right.
So the U.S. Census Bureau reports that only 12% of kids with two parents live in poverty versus 40% of kids with a single mother live in poverty. The U.S. Department of Health has reported a similar trend with kids. Children with dads do better in school. The Department of Education shows that kids with highly engaged fathers are 40% more likely to receive A's in school. Kids with a dual parent household are much less likely to repeat a grade level. And also, children without fathers do more jail time. Kids without a father in the home are far more likely to be incarcerated. The Department of Justice reports that nearly 40% of kids that were in jail lived in single mother households. This trend is similar with both boys and girls.
Kids with a father are less likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. Studies have shown that there is a significantly higher rates of smoking, alcohol, and drug abuse from kids that didn't have a present father. Children without a dad are more likely to be sexually active as teenagers. In multiple countries, studies are showing that children without a present father were 2 times as likely to begin sexual activity early in their teenage years and 7 times more likely to become pregnant. That's absolutely crazy.
That's because if there's a dad in the home, he don't play that game.
Yeah, that's right. He's watching.
He's watching. You weren't even allowed to be in my bedroom when we started dating, when I was a senior in high school. And you weren't even allowed to stay the night at my house until after we were married.
Right.
Even though we lived together in a different city before we were married, when we went back home to visit our families, we had to sleep at our separate homes.
Yep. You laugh about it.
I do laugh about it, but I do respect my
reason,
parents for making that rule.
They knew very well what we were going to do. And they were right. Kids with a father are less likely to be obese. This one seems a bit odd, but studies have shown that a father's BMI had a larger impact on a child's obesity rates versus the mother. It also seems to be the case that a father's activity level had a greater impact on a child's overall fitness.
I could see that.
That could happen simply because the father tends to engage in the physical activities a little bit more. This is not to say that the moms can't, or that they do. They certainly do.
This episode's on fatherhood.
Again, and we're not dumping on the single moms out there, but it's just the fact that single parent households tend to be overwhelmingly single mothers for, again, various reasons. We're not going to get into all that. So
that could be because of the way children in general look at fathers and want to emulate them.
Well, even KJ wants to engage with me in physical activities most of the time. Is that me doing that, or is that her engaging in that? Probably a little bit of both. But I certainly need to be there to also be intellectual and read with her, or to sit and watch a show sometimes, or to do an art project. It shouldn't just be playing volleyball or riding the bike or fishing or some physical activity,
And then I get all the basket weaving.
Right. That shouldn't be that way. Now, if it tends to go that way sometimes, there's probably reasons for that. You don't tend to play the sports with her, and that's okay. That's totally fine. You obviously shouldn't browbeat somebody because that's the way that it tends to go. But if you want to change that, get more involved in the other activities. Dads, get more involved in their homework. Talk more with their friends. Get more involved in what they like to do, not just the things you like to do, and then you're trying to drag them along. Children with fathers are more likely to take healthy risks. This one could be seen as a bit obvious. Research shows that kids with involved dads learn to take more healthy risks. Moms can be very protective of a child, especially when they're young, and there's nothing wrong with that.
We'll get into helicopter parenting later.
Dads are more influential in teaching kids to take on new challenges, think for themselves, and engaging with new people or new situations, things they haven't done before, because it's not familiar, it's not safe. A good tip that dads out there do encourage these things, but don't put your kids at some sort of unnecessary risk, okay? We're not saying make them vulnerable and put them in situations they can't handle.
Overall, children with dads or father figures, in this case, involved have an enhanced capacity to play, more capable of developing healthy relationships, less anxiety, and fewer mental disorders, and much more. Not that there was much doubt, but fathers matter a lot. We know how valuable moms are, but don't forget about the dads. And dads, don't forget about your importance with your kids. How you treat their mother also has a large impact. You show your daughter how she should be treated by her future husband, and your son how he should treat his wife. Dads, remember, you are replaceable at work, in clubs, or even with friends, but you are irreplaceable at home with your family. This week, our call to order is to be a dad. If you don't have a child, coach a little league or find a way to be a big brother or something to get involved. Kids need father figures in one way or another. Moms, make sure to show appreciation and respect for dad and be a cohesive unit in the household. If you are a dad, how can you be more present and engaged with your kids? Make sure that you guide them into adulthood and not just be their friend as well. You may not receive all the kudos now, but you will when it matters most. If you're ready for your marriage and family dynamic to thrive and not just survive, all it takes is 20 minutes or less joining us each week. It begins with a journey of self-improvement while you sit in the carpool lane, commute to work, squeeze in a workout, or get halfway through folding that laundry pile. Be sure to check out the blog at thefamilyorder.com and follow us on Facebook at The Family Order. If you're ready to start your journey, be sure to click subscribe so you don't miss new episodes every Monday.